The man is extremely well connected by a self-selected coalition where some people had a god mode, the shadiest one of them all. Could be crickets. Welcome back, guys. I'm gonna go over this picture just in parts, exploring some of the connections that our dear friend Scam Sam has. The man is extremely well connected, of course via family, and most definitely via MIT. Some of the connections are innocent, some of them seem a little shady, but they're all very, very interesting. So I'll go over some of this and then explore other avenues that I found kind of interesting or just really shady. But in either case, you guys be the judge. What is the most shady? And as you can see, judging from this picture, Sam Bankman-Fried definitely seems to be extremely well connected, not just because of his MIT background, but also, of course, his parents. In particular, the legal and academic field, which clearly has assisted so much to the sphere of Scam Sam. Now, just keep in mind, as we go over some of this information, sometimes it brings out the passion in people, especially when people see that Scam Sam donated a bunch of money to certain political groups. Please do keep in mind that the platform, YouTube, Google, that we all love, because of course we're watching this, we're commenting, we're learning things. YouTube likes things to be kept extremely PC. So nothing extreme on any subject. So keep that in mind when you're commenting, because the YouTube AI, the YouTube algorithm pays a lot of attention to what people say, not just in the videos, but also, of course, in the comments. And just straight off the bat, here's a nice diagram to show that Sam and FTX donated to both parties. Everyone in the world is fully aware of who he favored. So it's no surprise. Source from Center of Responsive Politics. Open Secrets. It's a nonprofit out of DC, and according to them, Sam donated twice as much to one side versus the other. But nonetheless, it's quite a bit of money going to both sides. And this nonprofit organization, Open Secrets, basically tracks data on campaign finances. So how many people that received money from Sam's donation, how many on either side have returned the money? I don't know. Probably not enough, I'll say that. Okay, so the biggest connection that Sam's gonna take advantage of across the board, there's no denying that, is gonna be the connection between himself and MIT. And of course, that's because Gary Gensler, who was heading the SEC and overseeing crypto regulations, he was a teacher at MIT. Caroline Ellison, the beautiful Caroline Ellison. Her father, Glenn Ellison, professor of economics at MIT, former boss of Gary Gensler. Now, Caroline Ellison's dad, Glenn Ellison, was also married to another professor at MIT, also working at MIT in the economics department, Sarah Fisher Ellison. That's Caroline Ellison's mother. According to MIT website, senior lecturer in economics. Research fields, interesting here, industrial organization within the context of economics. So you would think that Caroline Ellison, with parents like that, would have possibly done a better job at Alameda Research. And if anything, would have contacted her parents to try to get some assistance, not just in getting tips and such with Alameda, also potentially hiring them as consultants to help with the organization of Alameda. Maybe she was too embarrassed. Who knows? But I bet you her parents advised her to get counsel and of course to make the plea deal. Before I forget, another side note, I am not sponsored by any shitcoins. I'm not shilling any monkey pictures. I don't work for any projects. I make these videos all on my own, editing, researching, scripting, everything. So if I look like crap or look like I haven't slept, it's probably because I haven't. Okay, so let's continue with Caroline Ellison's parents. Extremely educated. For example, her mother, she's had visiting positions, including Center for Economic Studies in Munich, Germany, also an Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, and even the Paris School of Economics. So a very polished academic background. Her father, who went to Harvard for math, after that going to Cambridge University, getting a master's degree, and then from there moving on to a PhD at MIT. So extremely well-grounded in, of course, academia. He ends up being the boss of Gary Gensler. Now, Gary Gensler was educated at the University of Pennsylvania, also getting a master's there, eventually moving to Goldman Sachs, where he spent almost 20 years. So very deep in trading, finance. He was nominated by President Bill Clinton back in the day to be the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. So pretty high up, gaining a lot of connections, deep connections. Anyways, eventually he moves on to teach at MIT, professor of practice of global economics and management. So Gensler is kind of interesting because widely reported that he taught a class on blockchain at MIT. You can actually find the course on YouTube. Now, Gary Gensler, who seems to be very pro-crypto in general, but calling it the Wild West, it seems like he was always pro-regulation, even testifying that the SEC had no plans to ban crypto. Now let's look a little deeper with Gary Gensler's connection to some of the lawyer at FTX. What do you have when a lawyer is buried up to his neck in sand? Not enough sand. So one of the lawyers at FTX named Ryne Miller. This guy used to be lead counsel to Gary Gensler when Gary Gensler worked at the CFTC. So here on LinkedIn, we see that this guy specializes in financial markets, technology, trading, and crisis response. And here we see that he worked at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, where he was legal counsel to Chairman Gary Gensler at the time. Now, I think the MIT connection with Caroline Ellison, Glenn Ellison, Caroline's mom, and of course Gary Gensler is a good connection. But even more so, I think Gary Gensler's legal connections with FTX maybe, just maybe, helped out Sam a little more. Okay, so according to his LinkedIn page, he worked with Gary Gensler as a lawyer for 3 years and 4 months. And funny enough, it even has him listed as a guest lecturer at Stanford Law School, where Sam's parents work. Also interesting that on his LinkedIn page, it has him listed as FTX counsel from August 2021 through to March 2023. Pretty interesting there. So through the collapse. Now another guy that worked at the CFTC was Mark Wetjen. Not sure I got that right. Anyways, this guy actually became the acting CFTC chairman when Gary Gensler left. So this guy Mark, funny man, CFTC commissioner, ends up becoming a lobbyist for FTX. He was hired by FTX US as head of policy and regulation. So here he is pictured with the current commissioner, Caroline D. Pham. And she seems to have a pretty good sense of humor because she says that Scam Sam's hair is better than her own. So as you can see, Sam hired Mark Wetjen, who was the commissioner at the CFTC at some point, turned lobbyist for FTX, getting Sam introduced to the current commissioner at the CFTC to, of course, curry up some favors for the crypto industry and or just FTX in general. So this video is about connections. I'm not saying they did anything illegal. I'm just saying connections. Scam Sam, very well connected. Now there's another lawyer named Daniel Friedberg. Now this character is probably the shadiest one of them all. This guy is so shady, the new FTX team, headed by John Ray, the new CEO, called him the fixer, the crypto cleaner, and of course, a lawyer. He's also being sued by the new people running FTX. The new team managing FTX right now went as far as saying this past summer in the lawsuit that they filed that Daniel Friedberg enabled Sam Bankman-Fried's alleged crimes and helped them orchestrate the wide-ranging con game to raid the billions of dollars from customer funds. So the new FTX management, they're saying that this guy, Daniel Friedberg, should absolutely be looked at in a criminal fashion. And it's super interesting that the courts essentially seem to push back against Sam's defense team, making the argument that counsel had a lot to do with the crimes. Now, I'm no fan of Scam Sam, just look at all my videos. There's something there. It just seems a little fishy. Anyways, so looking around for some more info on this Daniel Friedberg guy, I came upon the online poker game universe, something I'm totally not familiar with, but apparently Daniel Friedberg has a long history with online poker gambling. So Daniel Friedberg was hired by FTX as its chief regulatory officer. Anyways, I found a few articles on the online poker gambling circuit that apparently Daniel Friedberg was accused of playing a prominent role of covering up and insider cheating at a site called Ultimate Bet sometime around in the mid-2000s. They claim that this guy was like a legal ninja, so much so that it allowed Ultimate Bet to evade a lot of US laws. For example, they claim that Daniel Friedberg facilitated a false front office in Canada, allowing an IPO on the London Stock Exchange, also allowing a fake sale of the company, licensing in various offshore jurisdictions. Apparently Daniel Friedberg has a long history of not complying with various jurisdictions and just evading them. And it's funny because his name actually came up a couple of times during the witness testimonies. Khan's son brought his name up. Nishad Singh brought his name up as well. I believe Nishad Singh told Friedberg he didn't want to be blamed for all the stuff that happened. Pretty funny because totally is being blamed, but Friedberg is not being blamed. Anyways, according to poker.org article, there was an insider cheating scandal involving this lawyer where some people had a god mode, some people running the company, Ultimate Bet, they had a god mode and they could access customer funds, and online gambling is pretty well regulated and crypto if not so regulated. Anyways, apparently Friedberg came up with a way to limit how much money they were supposed to return to the cheated players, the ones that they scammed. And the guy running the scam, someone named Hamilton fully admitted to stealing the customer funds. Funny enough, he recorded the conversation with Daniel Friedberg after certain statutes of limitations had passed, where Friedberg can be heard telling this guy the best strategy for dealing with the theft, with the scandal, was that a former consultant to the company had taken advantage of a server flaw by hacking into the software client. Wow, doesn't that sound so familiar? The computer bug at FTX and Alameda, allowing the negative account balance for Alameda, that an employee took advantage of a server flaw, a bug, i.e., maybe that Caroline Ellison took advantage of this flaw. I don't know. Seems a little bit too much like a coincidence. It's the same argument being used with FTX and Alameda collapse. Anyways, apparently in this taped conversation between one of the scammers and Friedberg told this guy that he needs to say that he's also one of the victims. Otherwise, it's not gonna fly. Wow, interesting. Anyways, in the tape, he goes on to say that he wants to minimize the exposure, how many millions they're supposed to return back to the customers, which apparently they stole like 5 or 10 times more than what was returned to the customers. And these were millions of dollars, so ouch. And according to poker.org, they claim that Daniel Friedberg's relationship with this online gambling company dates back from its initial founding days. So he was there from the start. So the article on poker.org, they claim that Friedberg, when he was selling his IPO, which included a fake company making stock purchases, that potentially Daniel Friedberg was setting up a bunch of investment funds, a bunch of shell companies to move stock and investments in and out of jurisdictions. So much so that the Norwegian government claimed it was the largest tax fraud in the nation's history. All a shell game scattered all over the world to avoid the legal ramifications and, of course, jurisdictions. That this included totals of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of revenue. That all the shareholders of the companies were essentially playing catch-up to the shell game by Friedberg, and they were left holding pennies on the dollar in terms of whatever stock they had in whatever company. Pretty interesting there. All very, very shady. So I'll put the link to the article from poker.org down below if you want to check it out. Pretty long, it's pretty in-depth, and of course it makes accusations against Daniel Friedberg. Now, does all this mean that Daniel Friedberg commit a giant scam? I don't know. But as some of you keen observers have noted, well, it's very likely that Sam, and of course his close confidants and co-workers, another senior member of FTX, and maybe even the lawyers themselves, very likely they probably have some offshore account. One of the comments by Vincent Orlando, he pointed out the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, the Pandora Papers, which was a series of scandals involving some firms out of Panama and parts of the Caribbean, where essentially all of the world's important figures were found to have a bunch of shell companies to hide money, to avoid taxes, etc., etc. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Sam set up shop in the Bahamas. It's super close to Florida, but different jurisdiction. And certainly Sam's parents would have known all of this. They would have known the history of utilizing these tax havens to shield yourself from US law, from European laws. And this lawyer, Daniel Friedberg, was apparently a professional at doing this stuff, at playing the shell game with a company dealing with money, online gambling, and crypto trading. Some people would say they're not that different. Of course, some people would say they're extremely different. I'll let you be the judge of that. Some strange connections. Now remember the FTX lawyer Kan's son, the one that came from Japan? So he worked at first for the firm called Fenwick, which was supposedly doing routine corporate legal work for FTX. Funny thing about that is his legal defense actually filed motions because they wanted to use Fenwick. They kind of wanted to make the argument that a lot of the blame should be put on Fenwick. The scam Sam was merely following the legal advice, and they gave the okay. They said that everything was kosher legally, and therefore Sam was not to blame. But that argument was struck down. So back in August, in late August, Sam's defense lawyers, they wrote a letter to the judge highlighting this defense argument. It was called the advice of counsel strategy. His defense team argues that the evidence of the defendant's reliance on counsel is relevant to the question of intent. It's not limited to situations where the defense can establish that Sam formally sought out the advice of counsel, received the legal advice, and followed the legal advice given. I really think there's something there. So essentially they were trying to make the argument because it covers the idea, the notion of intent. Sam was seeking the advice of those lawyers, got the advice, and followed the advice. And back when they had submitted this letter, CoinDesk, they said that the Department of Justice basically did a pushback against following this defense strategy, essentially making the argument that even prosecutors were pushing back against this defense. Anyways, according to Sam's legal team, the the law firm has basically thrown Sam under the bus. And that law firm itself is also being sued by FTX estate, the bankruptcy court, and is being sued by FTX customers in a giant class action lawsuit. The giant lawsuit that includes the celebrities, FTX estate, the Sam squad, they're suing everybody. So it includes the Fenwick law firm. Potentially they were advising the Sam squad that, hey, everything was kosher, everything was okay. They themselves could have been getting hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and now they don't have to disclose it. I would say that the FTX lawyers really should get looked at. I do also find it very strange that Can's son, when he found all of this out, quit the next day. In his testimony, he said he quit the next day, took off for Japan. I'm not sure when he took off for Japan, but he only came back to testify and to sign that plea deal agreement so that if he ever steps foot in the United States again, that he cannot be prosecuted for what he did at FTX. All seems a little coincidental to me. What's the difference between a lawyer and a vampire? Well, the vampire can only suck blood at night. Ouch. Pretty bad with those FTX lawyers. Now, Barbara Fried, she's another academic, Stanford Law School, that is also the co-founder of Mind the Gap, which actually Vox wrote a really good article about Mind the Gap. And I think the headline is super funny from Vox. They write, "Inside the secretive Silicon Valley group that has funneled over $20 million. But why is it so secretive?" And according to Vox, it's all led by Stanford academics. Anyways, according to them, apparently this Mind the Gap organization was using a statistical model, academics, to try to assess the precise impact of each additional dollar that was donated, as opposed to just funding the easiest seats to flip. Apparently one donor called it the money ball of politics. Anyways, according to Vox, some big names were donating using this Mind the Gap from Sam's mom, including Facebook co-founder and former CEO of Google, and a bunch of other Silicon Valley tech geniuses and money players. Anyways, does it seem that shady? I don't know. See, but the whole thing sounds kind of juicy. Barbara Fried, political operative, getting money. They're all crooks. They all get rich after a number of years working as public officials. According to Vox, they had a 50% success rate. 10 out of the 20 candidates they supported won their races. It's not a good success rate. Anyways, one thing I do find funny about Sam's mother is in her bio. You can check it out on Stanford's law school on the website, where it says Barbara's scholarly interests lie at the intersection of law, economics, and philosophy. She's a philosopher too. That she has written extensively on questions of distributive justice. I mean, talk about getting slapped by irony, right? Distributive justice in areas of tax policy, property theory, and political theory. This is the problem with law school. Everything is relative. I think a lot of the problems in society really stem from law school. 2013 article written in the Boston Review that she wrote. She essentially was explaining her moral relativism in this article. Quoting here what she said, "Researchers have found that people's evaluations of serious wrongfulness vary significantly across social conditions and individuals. The more information people have about the context of the crime, the person who committed it, and the circumstances he or she came from, the more nuanced are their views of moral responsibility." See what I'm saying? Moral relativism. So the aunt of Sam, Linda Fried, she's a member of the WEF. Maybe she wants to feed everyone bugs. Who the hell knows? Maybe that's why Sam became a vegan. World Economic Forum. On top of that, she's the first female dean, Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health. So another Ivy League master academic. She has a medical degree and an MPH, which is a Master of Public Health. And of course, now she's the dean of that department at Columbia University. She specializes in geriatrics and epidemiology, focusing on frailty, healthy aging, urbanization of aging, stuff like that. So I don't really see anything shady in that department other than being buddies with Klaus Schwab. Linda Fried, according to Columbia University, she was giving a speech. She was giving a talk at Davos, examining an aging, urbanizing world. You know, when it says natural flavors in some of those food ingredient packaging, could be crickets. So she's very well connected, of course, and being the dean, very well respected with the WEF, even more connections, which I'm guessing a lot of them would be available to scam Sam. Now here's a picture of Sam in a Jumbotron. Maybe he was aspiring to head the WEF. Maybe he had a thing for Jumbotrons just like Klaus Schwab. And I'm certainly no fan of the WEF. By any means, this might sound controversial, but there's one thing I truly respect about Klaus Schwab and the WEF. All of their ideas, everything is laid out for people to see on all that they lobby for. So if academics and political leaders want to basically pimp themselves out, well, is it really any surprise? They're all trying to get in with the in crowd the special people. So even Wikipedia's WEF page, I think, is pretty funny. For example, just on the 4th paragraph, it says the forum suggests that a globalized world is best managed by a self-selected coalition of corporations, governments, and social organizations, which are basically nonprofits or NGOs. So there you go. They themselves admit to this goofy idea of being the self-selected corporatist of the globalized world. It's almost comical. It even goes as far as saying it expresses through initiatives like the Great Reset and global redesign. So of course, the special group of humans that are self-selected, who are more special than the rest of us, they need to herd us. They need to tell us what to do, how to live. And of course, stop eating meat and eat some bugs, because it's just better for everyone. So anyways, that's Linda Fried's connection to the WEF. Look how happy Sam is, hanging out with Katy Perry, Orlando Bloom, and Kate Hudson. Anyways, it's become clear that Sam was throwing money left and right, buying connections, and of course, buying his celebrity endorsements and friends with just a ton of money, insane amounts of money, where he paid that Curry basketball player like $28 million for an FTX commercial. It's insane. But when you can print money from thin air, or print crypto from thin air, who cares, right? Literally, you can fund anything, and people will probably worship you. They'll think of you as a friend. I really think this picture says a lot about our society and the way that money works. Now, of course, a lot of people think crypto is BS. It's a way to scam people out of money. It's a way to wealth transfer from everyday folks to scammers, or from everyday folks hoping to basically financially escape the financial misery they find themselves in. What this picture says is that those who deal in the platform, in the companies that actually handle the transaction of money, those are the ones that come out winning. That applies to the banks, the hedge funds, all the financial institutions. They're the ones getting filthy rich. Just as these guys in crypto, handling all the transactions, they're the ones walking away with billions and billions. So the guy showing off his Lambo because he bought Bitcoin at $5, that is peanuts compared to what these guys made. All right, guys, well, that's it for this one. Well, thanks for watching. Smash a like if you haven't. Please do subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.